I'm going to go through all these the right way. Because technically I want them to be on the base circle, just to make sure we're not adding anything from the spring. But technically when something's bottomed out, this is all just thread stretch anyway. Perfect. And that's really all we needed to do. After everything else we did, the thing's just that good. 51, 53, 60, yay! Oh my goodness. Mid-12s or so. And speed is slowly coming up from the poor little 300 inline six. Our shift where we lift off the gas, and we're at high RPM in a manual, so vacuum's gonna go high. Howdy my friends, and welcome to the channel today. I'm Luke, Thunderhead289 here on YouTube. And we finally have some warm weather again in Iowa. You know, we're halfway through the year, but it's kind of how the Midwest is. But we're getting back to the F100 now. We got some fun stuff that we're going to go through it. And today, I think we'll have it on the road and get everything tested out. And I have a feeling it's going to be doing pretty well. Everyone say hi to Joe. Wave, Joe. Joe's over there doing some serious science stuff at the moment, so I'm going to have to pull him away so we can work on this together, / he does most of the work and I just talk. So with that, let's jump in. So like you guys said in the last video, and we could hear it as well, it sounds like there's some valve train noise. And as we referenced, the cylinder head had been off, you know, so valve train probably had to be reset. So we're going to get that off and get a look and go through and adjust our valve train really quick. And we also have an interesting ignition thing that we'll get to in a moment. But first, let's get this valve train handled. All right, so it's kind of some exploratory stuff. So apparently I was wrong in the last video. This cylinder head is not from the 68. And this might be a 240 or a 300. I'm not. What's the bottom end on this?
I think it's a 300.
Okay, and so the cylinder head looks like it's a fuel injected head with these, and maybe if you guys know, you can let me know. Like I said, I don't have a lot of direct experience with 300s. I thought maybe it would have pedestal rockers, but it doesn't. It does have, in fact, adjustable rockers unless they tighten down on the end of the stud. So we'll pop one off and take a look. But side note, cork valve covers are pretty good. It always helps to gasket sealer them to the valve cover itself and then run a thin layer of oil on the mating surface, and then they never stick and they always stay on the valve cover side. So luckily we got this one off without screwing it up. It's rare. Oh mate, it's still leaking. I thought we tightened that. Well, did you get where the vice grips at?
Well, they're right there, and I got distracted.
All right, there we go. You can always make a quick fuel line clamp with some needle nose vice grips and some rubber hose. In this case, gas tank's in the cab, so that's a lot higher than this point. There we go. Lost about like a gallon of gasoline. It's fine. Cleans out the sinuses. All right, so it looks like these are technically pedestal style, and probably 300 inline six guys are going like duh, but you know, I mostly work on Windsors, so I was kind of unfamiliar and I didn't really want to use the Google, but you can tell they're pedestal even though they have a stud. One dead giveaway is the adjustment nut, or rather in this case the locking nut isn't one of those that's, you know, like a lock nut style. It just rotates. And so basically what you're supposed to do is run it all the way down and then just set it to the torque. Let me get the rocker arm off here. So you can see it spins on easy. If you tried to like adjust this and be like, yep, it's good, this would move all over the place. So it's supposed to be down all the way, you know, with the rocker arm on there and everything, and then it's just torqued, and it is what it is, much like a normal Windsor style pedestal rocker. So a lot of people I've seen get tripped up by this stuff on forums with these on some Windsor cylinder heads. So anyway, we're going to go through the sequence just because I feel better about it. So really, when I do valve train, there's a lot of different ways that people always say, oh, tighten this, go a quarter of a turn, tighten all of them. All that's a bunch of tomfoolery. The easiest way to be sure of everything is right now I'm turning the engine over and we're watching this rocker arm. When it's at its max dwell, it's not going down anymore. Now, if this was an adjustable rocker, you could successfully adjust this rocker on this cylinder, or in this case, we're going to torque it, and I just feel better about doing it this way anyway. And the reason I do that is it works for any engine, because there's no engine on the planet that when the opposing valve is at max open dwell, the other valve that we would be adjusting is opening or not. You want to be on the base circle of the cam, and 100% of the time it's going to be on the base circle of the cam in this case with almost any engine, anything I've encountered. So now when you don't know or you're not sure about things, it's always a good idea to look things up. So, you know, this is a weird hodgepodge engine, and I'm just not familiar with the torque spec on these in-between era pedestal stud rocker things that you torque instead of, you know, kind of make an adjustment with preload. You know, they're just going to be what they're going to be. So I think we've been able to find that they're supposed to be 20 to 25 foot-pounds, somewhere in that range.
17 to 23.
17 and 23, whatever. I'm going to go through all these the right way. Because technically I want them to be on the base circle, just to make sure we're not adding anything from the spring. But technically when something's bottomed out, this is all just thread stretch anyway. Okay, well, they're all tight, and they're just going to be noisy, apparently. It just is what it is. Good.
Sewing machine.
Sewing machine indeed. All right, we went through all the valve train, checked everything. Everything seems just fine, so we can cross that off our list. Now we're looking at this ignition piece. Now on a Ford, like this era, you know, 68, it would have been a points ignition vehicle. And even Ford, having a love affair with the Duraspark, in the later years, they all had resistive leads. Now this has an HEI distributor in it, so, you know, it's expecting to see 12 volts. And I bet you there's a good chance, where is the hood here? Here we go. There's a good chance that our friend right here is in fact has a resistive lead still in place on a distributor that should be seeing 12 volts, but actually it's seeing 7 or 6 or 8 or wherever. So, you know, it makes a big difference, and we're going to want to correct that right now if that's the case. All right, we've pulled the ignition wire from our HEI, which definitely looks like the factory Ford wire. So probably definitely a resistive lead, but we're just going to verify. So our positive lead is here on our ignition wire, and then we're grounded to the block. Got our multimeter set to voltage. Joe is going to flip the key on to ignition. Good? Yep. All right. And then we are going to take a little look in here. And it reads nothing. Is your key on?
Key's on.
Oh. Your battery's not on, though.
Forgot I borrowed that for the tractor.
Rip. Okay.
Here it is. Oops.
All right. So take 2 with the battery, mate. All right.
The meter on?
Sure is.
How about now?
Oh no, it's actually 12 volts.
Oh, well, that throws a wrench in things.
Oh, so what do we got going on there? 'Cause I'm pretty sure that's the resistive lead. Now normally I test this with a vehicle running, but being the HEI, I didn't. I don't know if that plays into it in any way, shape, or form. I guess it could, question mark?
Yeah, I mean, if the resistive lead has no current passing through it, it basically just allows all the voltage through it. V equals IR.
Science guy.
Science guy.
Doing science things. So, all right, well, let's throw our valve cover back on and check that again. Fancy tool guy.
Lazy tool guy.
So I think Joe bested me here where he's definitely right. At least this truck definitely was originally a resistive lead. You know, one key indicator is on the Ford starter, it has this eye, and basically when you're cranking, this supplies 12 volts and bypasses the resistive lead. So if, without starting the truck, if we unhook this, and it's a 300, so it'll probably just start because that's what it does, and we crank it, we should see a lower voltage. So right now we have 0. All right, so Joe's gonna crank the truck here with our lead unhooked. We should see less than 12 volts. Actually, turn the key on first, and then we're gonna look at it.
Key on.
All right, see, there we have 12 volts. and we don't have any load on it. So now go ahead and crank it over. Yep, it's a resistive lead for sure. Okay. You were right, sir. You have bested me.
Electrical engineering school did something.
Hey, there you go. All right, just for some science here, we have the lead hooked back into our starter solenoid, which should bypass and give 12 volts to the ignition while cranking. Go ahead and crank it. There we go. Yep, higher voltage cranking, and then once running there, we're back to our resistive lead. Okay, problem solved. So, okay, it's been assessed that we have a resistive lead. Now, the right way to do this is to climb under the dash, clip the resistive lead out, run a new wire. But we're kind of on a tight schedule today, and my back hurts, and I don't want to lay under the dash today either. So we're going to do something a little unorthodox, but I don't know, we're going to see how it goes. So with the carb cheater here, we have kind of a universal auxiliary lead that you can set up to do anything you want with it. Our thoughts were kind of a window switch, which is basically an RPM-based switch, or you could use it for a choke. There's a few different settings that you can set this up with in the app, and we'll look at that in a second. But basically, it's a dry contact. So in that case, all we have to do is hook one of these leads to the battery, and then one of these leads to the ignition over here on the distributor, and basically then it hard saves in this case for this setting we're going to use. So when the key's on, it's going to be passing 12 volts to our distributor like we want, and when the key's off, it's not going to be. Is this what you should use this for? No. Our main thoughts were to use this for a choke where, when your key's on, now you have power to your electric choke. But it'll work for this, and we're just going to see what happens. All right, we got our carb cheater dry contact leads. One side's hooked into the battery, and at the moment we have it probed here with the multimeter, so we can just take a look at how this works. Make sure we cycle our multimeter so it doesn't shut off in the middle. Okay, let's go ahead and open our app. Should auto connect here. Bing, there we go. So now to get to the setup screen, you'll put in your product key. Now each of these has a specific product key for it. So basically, someone can't connect to yours and do crazy stuff with your engine. Each one has its own unique code. So anyway, now we're at the setup screen. So we're going to go ahead and test our relay. You can hear it clicking in. So here we go. 12. All right, so that's kind of our test feature where you can use just to verify things. And so now there's a toggle and save mode. So now it's on, and when the key is on and carb cheater is on, this relay will also be on. So that was kind of my thought with an electric choke it could be used for and different things. It also has a setting for RPM where it runs as basically a window switch where above this RPM it's going to be on. So you use it for a shift light. I don't want to say you can use it for nitrous, but I mean, maybe you could use it for an interlock for that. It's really up to whatever you want to do with it, but those are some of the features of that. But in this case, we're going to take this signal and send it over to our ignition coil. We have our resistive lead taped off here, and so when the key's on, we're going to be sending full 12 volts to the ignition via our auxiliary relay. And
Parts are here.
Oh, good. Finally getting some of our parts in for... There we go. There's a bunch of carb cheater harnesses. Pretty cool. What do you think?
It's a lot of harnesses.
All right, so we're all hooked in here in the coil. Obviously, you can see this is very temporary. You'd want to get back and actually do this right and run a wire from under the dash that's 12 volt that bypasses the resistive lead. But for now, this will work, and I think we're good to go and we can hit the road. Now, it seems like with folks that have Fords, I see a lot of negative comments associated with Pertronics, and everyone always saying the HEIs burn out and they're unreliable. And really, it's because Fords, if you had a Duraspark or points ignition, which most classic Fords do, they all have this resistive lead in place and no one ever removes them. In the documentation for HEIs or Pertronics, it says in numerous places that they need to be supplied with 12 volts. And hitting them with an undervoltage scenario ultimately just burns all that stuff out. So, you know, if you have a Ford, look out for the resistive lead, bypass it under the dash, and then you'll be totally fine. All right, air filter's on. Everything looks like it's good to go. I think it's time to start the truck up and drive out. We're just going to shut the hood. We're just going to assume we're going to succeed today. All right, looks like it's about that time. What a nice interior on this truck that you have here, sir. It's a very vintage 70s seat effect. All right. Oh, maybe our ignition thing didn't work.
Maybe not. Let's see.
Oh, we got our ignition lock on. Oh.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it runs.
Works a lot better
weird
without that on.
when theft deterrent's off. Strange. All right, so we're gonna hit the road here, and we're gonna keep our auto tune adjustment off on the carb cheater for now. We just want to get a baseline and see what this truck actually does, you know, just on its own. Never had any gauges on it before, and just really have no idea. So let's hit the road, see what we have. Now, one thing that's interesting is this truck's had some rear end gear swaps, so apparently the speedo's never been right. So I'll be really interested to see how it does against the GPS speedometer, because we also don't really know how fast the truck actually goes down the road in whatever gear.
It would help if you put it in gear too.
Oh, you don't need that. All right, so we're on the road and some pretty interesting discoveries, and I always try and tell everyone that ignition and air fuel ratio very much so play off of each other. So now we've largely done nothing to the carb, and before this thing was pig rich, not counting the float sticking. That was a different issue that we corrected. But now with the ignition seeing 12 volts, we're going down the road at our AFR is 14, and everything looks super clean. Let's take a look at this thing. So it doesn't come through perfect on the camera here. I'm sure you're seeing the shutter speed, but we're just cruising down the road at 14 with our AFR. Our speed's working good. The speedo is about 10 off or so. So it's pretty handy to have that here. RPM, everything's just pretty clean. Go ahead and tow into it. Pretty good. So this just shows you how much that one barrel kind of in a way holds it back. You know, it still has manifold vacuum left at full throttle. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting piece. But yeah, AFR is really clean, and this is with auto tune off. It's not doing anything. This is just raw carb at the moment. Good clean shot of Iowa and its natural habitat here, where you don't have cattle, you have cornfields, of course. Like I say in a lot of my tuning videos, carburetors are forgiving, but ignition timing really isn't. So, you know, we kind of see from the AFR that just something didn't seem right in our last video, so we went to poking around more and obviously found some notable issues with our ignition timing that were causing some pretty significant potential problems. You know, we corrected all that, and then magically our AFR is notably better than it was on our last drive. So, you know, just being able to see what's going on with the engine, it's very revealing when you need to do something, or if everything's just fine the way it is and you can drive down the road and not worry about anything. All right, driving around the road, everything looks actually pretty good on the tune on this old one barrel carburetor. There's really not a whole lot to do except for tune idle, which seems to be a little on the rich side, around 11.5. So with the AFR right in your hand, you can just dial that in, and just that easy, I guess. All right, so here we go. This feels like just cheating since we don't have to do any guesswork. Go ahead and we'll put this where you can see it. I just put it about at 13. All right, looks good to me. Perfect. And that's really all we needed to do. After everything else we did, the thing's just that good. get going. We missed a turn, and well, now it's an adventure. Oh boy. Alright, so this thing runs pretty good. So we're going to turn the data log on, and we're going to try and do a 0 to 60 run. And this is probably going to have to go into part 3 because we'll probably, I don't know, it's going to take till next week to do it. But let's just punch the gas pedal on this thing, see what she does.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Starting in second gear.
$51, $53, $60, yay! Oh my goodness. We'll take a look at that data log, because I'm sure it's pretty laughable. Apparently it's Christmas today. The UPS guy just showed up and dropped off all of our valves and spacers that we designed and had machined.
Wow.
Fancy. They did a good job on those. I'm just still amazed that they could machine that out of one piece so cleanly. That's better than their samples. That's aluminum, by the way. That's not plastic. All right, round 2. The spacers we designed. This is true phenolic, except it's even one step better than that. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but it's pretty good stuff. So we press in the brass vacuum ports that we designed for the 4-barrel stuff. But you can see here you have 2 common manifold vacuum ports that you can put under your 4-barrel carb. And then also it's super insulative, so it does a great job of keeping heat off the carb and, you know, mitigating all those heat-related anomalies. What do you got in there? Open that again. That looks really suspicious.
It does look really suspicious.
That looks bad.
It's got all the fittings.
All things that are good. That's a nice fitting. Alright, so we got a little distracted there. Let's get back to the truck and take a look at our 0 to 60 run data log, which is going to be absolutely hilarious. But, you know, let's step back from that. And, you know, this is an Iowa farm truck. It's not about hot rodding. It's not about speed. It's about good drivability and consistency and reliability. And it seems like we've achieved all that. It runs and drives really good. AFR and all the telemetry looks good. You know, no complaints. So I failed to mention when we were in the vehicle that you can actually look at your data log on your phone, but also you can email it to yourself and look at it on the computer. So I'll show you how we get there from the phone. So you have where you can view your data log, which it kind of does it in script form here. So we'll see here. So you can kind of go through that, you know. But what's really nice is the graph data log. So that's going to route to our website, and it populates, it pulls in your data from your data log and actually represents it in a graphical display. So that's pretty much what we have here on the screen because we emailed it to ourselves, so that was really easy. So you see here we got a few things we can do. Move your start and end time around. So if you want to really zoom in on, say, this area, you could manipulate these values and it will repopulate your graph. If you scroll down ever so slightly, Joe. So here's your data key. This will save for 30 days, and you can email this to yourself, and that's what we did, where we were able to auto route to the web page here. So just looking at the data log, how to interpret it. The blue is our vacuum, basically our engine load. The red is our air-fuel ratio, and here's kind of what your air-fuel ratio is on your axis. Your speed obviously is the blue, and the black here is your RPM. So you saw we were idling here somewhere just below 15 on the AFR, down here at like, I don't know, 700 RPM. And you can wheel in and really see what you're doing. So, you know, 750 RPM or so. Joe kind of revved it a few times, and then we stood on it, and you can actually see as it's a manual, our gear shifts and some of our telemetry here. So let's go ahead and manipulate this and zoom in on our 0 to 60 time. So that starts at about, I don't know, what would you say, like 11.5 to 30. There we go. So that repopulated our graph. So you can see we hammer on the throttle here, RPM goes up, our AFR drops down to a nice safe range in the mid 12s or so, and speed is slowly coming up from the poor little 300 inline six. Our shift, where we lift off the gas, and we're at high RPM in a manual, so vacuum's going to go high. We grab the next gear, we're climbing through, we do it again, and then all the way 20 seconds later, we actually get to 60. So anyway, we kind of set this data log up in a way that something that we want that necessarily wasn't out there before, and we kind of like the way that it reads. But I don't know, it just seems like a handy thing to be able to have, because now we can kind of look back and see what was going on with the truck without having to see it in the moment, where we can keep our eyes on the road, and you know, it's safer and you can think about it later versus right then and there. Now the carb cheater actually has AFR adaptive capability based on a lot of this telemetry, but in this case, you know, I'm starting to see why everyone likes the 300 inline six so well, because when it's tuned good, it is rock steady, consistent. This is what you want for high load AFR, and it's doing it all on its own with the carb, you know, and it's honestly just really good. The carb cheater does some stuff at idle to keep it consistent and a little bit at cruising, but overall, you know, the carb's pretty dialed and it's just doing its thing on its own, and we can see everything that shows us that. We're pretty happy with it. All right, my friends, thanks for coming along with us today on our little F100 revival. I think Joe's dad will be able to drive down the road with the truck and not have to worry a thing about it. We're going to get to this car here shortly. It's been off the road for, I don't know, it's been like forever. So Joe's been working like crazy to put this thing back on the road. As a vintage style drag car. So, you know, we're definitely going to have to play with that one a little bit. But with that, I appreciate you guys coming along with me. And the data log on this truck, I'll leave a link below. So, you know, you guys can look at that same log file and play around with it and manipulate as you please. So with that, I'll see you guys for the next one. Take care.